Rocker Mike. Welcome to the Rocker Mike and Rob Presents show. Rob in the top right. How are you, Rob?
Pretty good. Doing good today.
Hey. And on the bottom, we have musician Mark Bacino. How are you, Mark?
Good, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
You're very welcome. Mark has a new album out. It's his fourth album called Top of the World. Came out this year. There it is. And I was shown this album, and I listened to it, and I was very surprised on what I heard. I was expecting something a little different than what I got, but all good, because you came across on this record as like serious singer-songwriter type in a 70s kind of way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I know your genres kind of go over different things. You're kind of a power pop guy, am I right?
Sort of? That's kind of where the niche that I've fallen into. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, before we get into it with Mark, let's give a shout out to the Mineola Diner, Jericho Turnpike and Willis Avenue in Mineola, Nassau County, Long Island, about 20 minutes from Queens. Great food there. Get there early. They close early. They're an old school diner, just like you see in like watching an episode of Alice or something like that with Mel's Diner, like that. Great omelets, breakfast, lunch. Fantastic. See Shane, he runs the place, and if you mention Rocker Mike, you get a free soda or free tea or cup of coffee, whatever you want with that. And then also got to mention Arp's Tavern in Floral Park, Queens. One of my watering holes. You could probably find me staggering out of there. Rob, you've been there a couple of times.
It's a pretty good place.
Yeah. It's been there over 100 years. It's family owned. It's right next to the Floral Park, Long Island Railroad Station. Go in there, visit Patrick, the bar manager. They're all good. Mike, Brian, all these guys are fantastic to take care of you. That is Arp's Tavern, over 100 years there in Floral Park. All right. So, Mark, I am going to give you the floor. Okay. I want you to tell us your story, how you got started playing music, where you're from, all that. Okay?
Cool, man. Yeah. Right. And yeah, support the locals, man, for
sure.
Yeah,
and before we start, sometimes we like to drink on these shows, so I'm cracking a beer.
Right, man.
And I am going to listen to a great story here, because you're a Queens guy like me, all right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, guys, again. And yeah, so where do I begin? I could tell you the abbreviated version. I don't think you want to sit here for 4 hours and hear every detail. But yeah, so I grew up in Queens, and I started playing music as a young, like, preteen and stuff like that, and started playing guitar and got into doing some home recording and stuff like that. Had a little 4-track cassette machine, and just was always kind of enamored by that kind of idea of some of the people who are, as we're talking 80s now, we're like talking early 80s, right. People like Prince and people like that you would hear that were like recording all their stuff themselves, so I was intrigued by that as a kid, but yeah, just to rewind back, I started playing guitar and keys, and then from there I started getting into the recording thing, like I'm saying, and just was totally enamored by it, and moved on from there. Started playing in the local bands, and particularly one in particular that I spent a lot of time in. And we kind of did that through high school and college. And
what was their name, Mark?
That band was called The Edge. It wasn't a very creative name, and it was kind of it was a good band though. We did a lot of original music in a time when people were doing a lot of covers. So depending on the gig, that didn't always go over so well. But it was a tight unit, man. It was a cool band, and we did that. I did that through high school and college, and then in college, the guitar player in the band and I had done something that was kind of odd for the time, which was we got into sort of expanding the recording and producing thing. We built a studio that was like housed in my friend's parents' basement of all places, and we then started recording local. That was in Ozone Park, actually, and we started recording local bands and you know, doing production, just making beer money and stuff in college, and you know, cut our teeth. Learned a lot. I learned a lot about producing and stuff that I would, you know, do later on from that time. You know, we were just young guys helping neighborhood bands out and stuff like that. And then when that other band dissolved and I just started doing stuff on my own. You know, I'd always been dabbling in it, like I said, but so, you know, long story short, put out a few releases, self-releases at the time, back in the day on cassette and stuff like that.
I remember those days. Yeah.
Those days, man. And then one thing led to another. Eventually, I got signed to a label, indie label, pretty well-known indie label in the power pop world called Parasol Records.
Yeah.
And Parasol put out my first couple of records and just kind of took off from there. It's funny, I'm actually back on the Parasol label now for this release, so it's sort of like a bit of a homecoming,
coming full circle kind of thing, right?
Yeah, coming full circle. And in between, you know, Japanese labels that had put out records, I had deals over there, and you know, just all that kind of stuff. So yeah, kind of fell into, like you said, the pop, power pop niche, I would say. And
what are some of your influences? I know you mentioned Prince, but you know, are there any other bands that you kind of would say you're influenced by?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, just from my music, I think people always go, well, you're a Beatles guy, you're a Beach Boys guy. Harry Nilsson is a big one for me.
That I hear in your music, a lot of Nilsson, but
yeah, a lot of people say
on this record. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Todd Rundgren, things like that. I hear that a lot, and it makes sense because, you know, the music is definitely circles around that. Yeah, I mean, those are huge influences on me for sure. You know, definitely into that kind of stuff. But a lot of bands that people don't know I'm into, because I grew up as a teenager in the 80s. You know, was like equally as influential for me were like people like Prince or the Cars or the Police or even like Hall and Oates or some people like that, you know, like big top 40 people of the day, you know, back then, which were all, you know, they're all pop acts too. So it all kind of makes sense. You know, I'm kind of like an ultra melodic guy. That's my like thing, you know, like anything that's very melodic, you know, I'm into. So, you know, it kind of, people are surprised, you know, when I say like, oh, the Cars, you know, because they don't hear that in my music, but you know, it's all like a pop melodic thing to me. So,
oh, the Cars were very melodic.
Oh yeah.
Okay, sure. No, that was like 90% of what they were was melodic.
Yeah, for sure.
Know, they just had that quirkiness about them.
Yeah, that new wave.
They had that, yeah, like that mysterious kind of quirkiness, you know, about them. But you know, it's funny. I grew up a big Cars fan. Okay. Cool. But I have to say they were like one of the worst live bands I'd ever seen.
Right. Yeah, they were a little stiff live. Man. I always remember I saw them in '84.
Yeah, I saw them there to the you know, You Might Think I'm Crazy, and you know that album.
Yeah. I saw them at the Forest Hills Tennis Stadium.
Yeah, I saw them at the Nassau Coliseum.
Okay. So wow. It's like that's probably the Heartbeat City tour. It's the same.
Yeah,
and I just remember like that was like, I just remember it being super loud, and like them just like sort of standing on stage, and it was.
I don't think they talked to the audience at all. I think maybe once at the end or something.
Really dawn of MIDI, and maybe I'm getting a little technical for everybody, but the like in the dawn of in terms of recording and technology and all that stuff, it was at the very beginning of like computers,
digital,
like. And I remember that band had like a Fairlight, which was a super expensive computer at the time.
Yeah.
And I just always remember looking at the keyboard player, and most of the songs for that tour, for that last record that they were touring on, or that current record, he was just sitting there like this with his arms. Like the computer was like this.
Computer, right. I think I remember that. The computer was doing,
you know, like he would play the older songs. He would get in there and physically play the older tunes. But
the first and second album or something like that.
Right. But yeah, so yeah, it was just like, yeah, it was a little, I just remember it being super loud, super crowded, like a ton of pot haze over my head. You know, that was back in the day, man, when the concerts were a little unruly and more fun.
People ripping up the seats at metal shows and all that.
I was looking at your website. It's pretty impressive. Some of the stuff that I was
thanks,
reading
man.
and looking at, it was very
Thanks,
good. That's what I was just looking at, the website.
What is your website so everybody can check it out?
It's his name.com.
Yeah, it's markbacino.com. It's Mark with a K, BACINO.com. And if that's the spelling is hard to remember, I also have popjob.com, POPJOB.com, which is a title of my first record. I've had that URL since like 98 or something. So there you go. So that's easy to remember, popjob.com. Either one will take you to the same place.
Cool. So this is your fourth record, Top of the World. And like I said, when I first listened to it, it had like, I mean, you got brass in there, you got horns, you got all kinds of stuff going on. And, very kind of 70s singer-songwriter, Harry Nilsson kind of feel to it. I don't want to say, when you think 70s singer-songwriters, some of that is kind of lame. Okay.
Right.
People think like James Taylor and stuff like that. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't know if you are, but
I don't mind him from a songwriter standpoint.
Absolutely a great songwriter.
I totally get what you're saying, though.
Yeah, it's a little too low key for me.
Right.
You're more upbeat.
Right.
Okay. And but before we get into this album, let's maybe go back. Okay. And you have 3 other albums before this.
Right.
And again, you're basically playing all the music, right?
Well, it depends. I can't say that definitely because it depends on the cut, depends on the record. There are some songs where I'm playing everything, and then there are other tunes where I might be playing one instrument or no instruments. I might be singing. I mean, I'm always, as a producer as well, I'm always sort of looking at the bigger picture and deferring to the best players in the room. So I've been fortunate to work with some cool co-producers. Who are have been great players or just have a lot of great players around me. Like you mentioned, the brass. On this record, on Top of the World, I have Michael Lenhart playing a lot of brass on. He's the trumpet player in the Steely Dan live band now.
Right.
And, he's worked with tons of people. Bruno Mars and Lenny Kravitz, Yoko Ono, the list goes, Elvis Costello. The list goes on and on. So. Yeah, I mean, I don't play brass, but I mean, whoever I can, get in on the projects who are killer, I'm going to do it. Like I play guitar and piano. I play a little bit of everything: guitar, play piano, bass, drums. Enough to do damage and to be dangerous. But if I'm in the room with a great guitar player, which I am a lot of the times, I'm not going to play guitar. So it's a mix.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Well, with this record, what was the when was your last one? How many years ago did that come out?
It's been a while, man.
Yeah, because I think there was a break in between, right?
Yeah, it's been a long while. It's crazy, really. It's been about 14 years now. Well, I put out a single in 2016, but since between albums, it's been 14 years. It's just crazy. People have been like, "Wow," the response to this record has been flattering. Like I don't know, maybe it's just absence makes the heart grow fonder. Like you think, oh, people are going to forget. In the sort of niche community that like this kind of music, but no, man, the response has been great, and so yeah, it's been a long time, man. It's been like 14 years, just so many, it's just crazy life. It's like all I can say.
Maybe part of the family, I guess, or
yeah. There's like all kinds of things, family, outside work, production work that I do. My wife and I have a son. I have a 93-year-old mom now who's unfortunately, failing, and it's kind of been going on for about 5 years. So I'm looking at, overseeing her care and sort of every facet of that. So
it's hard in the music business to juggle all that.
Oh man, yeah.
People that work full-time jobs and try to be full-time musicians. That's very difficult.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I've been working for an outlet here in New York, doing production work, and so you ball all that together, and then you throw in the horrible tragedy of COVID for a couple of years, and before you know it, man, it's 14 years later.
Yeah, no, I mean it's already been 4 years since COVID, okay,
Right.
and you know time flew by, but you know we've done so many shows. We've been doing these rock shows for over 5 years now. Okay, this is the Rocker Mike and Rock Present show. That's been 5 years too. We pretty much started that in 2019. And so many people, you know, because of COVID, their careers just came to a screeching halt, basically, you know. But it's good to see that you got back into it after the break.
Yeah, man, I've been trying, you know, just to do it in fits and starts. I really started this new record, you know, maybe like a year after the other record had come out and gone through that whole press cycle, and we did some live shows and stuff, and then I kind of you know, just was doing it when I could, and that's it. So better late than never, I guess.
What do you draw like your songwriting influences from? Like is it just life experiences, or is it, you know, some people get ideas even from literature or, you know, whatever, things like that. What's your biggest influence as far as songwriting?
Yeah, man, I could say it probably comes from everywhere. All the things you mentioned, for sure. I think these days my writing is probably getting more personal. Um, I think there's always a personal element to it. You know, even when you don't think you're writing. I mean, I do a lot of thinking about this because I have songwriting students that I work with too. So I have to sort of distill down my thoughts on this stuff a lot of the times. But I think even when you're not writing about yourself, or you don't think you're writing about yourself, you probably are somewhere in there.
Unconsciously.
Yeah, subconsciously. So it's a mix of both. I think my first two records were more, you know, maybe less directly personal, but again, I think they, you know, they were personal. But I find that the last two records, my previous record in 2010, Queen's English, and this new one, Top of the World, feel like they're really where I started to kind of really open up the floodgates on the personal side of things, and just kind of go with it. You know, I think maybe that comes with age or experience or something, and you know, I think when you get personal, you know, you sort of can also, if the craft is there and you do it right, and hopefully you get lucky, a little lucky, you can kind of turn the personal into the universal, you know, where everybody can kind of like kind of understand from their point of view and relate. Yeah, you know, so that's kind of where I'm at, you know, these days. I don't shy away from the personal stuff.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the best music out there is probably the most personal.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes you don't have to even know it's personal, but it just is, you know, as a fan, you know, you might not know that, oh, that's because of the songwriter that went through this or that, but you could just relate to it because look, I mean, we all bleed red. We all go through a lot of the same stuff.
For sure.
Okay. And music is such a, you know, a uniting force in all that. Okay. That's what makes music the great thing. Okay. Is we can relate to each other through these songs, you know. And one particular track, I think you released it as a single off your new album with Kaylee Hughes.
Right. Yeah, that was the single for the record. Yep.
Right. Great. I think it opens the album, right?
That's correct. Yep. Totally.
Okay. Is there a Kaylee Hughes? Does she exist?
Yeah. I've been getting that question a lot, man.
Who is she?
Yeah, I actually to pivot on the whole personal thing. That's probably the least personal song on the record. Kaylee Hughes is I'm happy to report or whatever is not a real person, but she is sort of a mashup of and I don't know why I even wrote about this or it even occurred to me. But she's sort of the mashup of all those people we meet in the world who were like maybe a little too good to be true, you know, kind of thing. Where you almost get a little cynical and you don't believe that person can be that nice. So then, you know, all sorts of feelings can flood in there, you know, like you're like, oh, well, why couldn't they be nice? You know, that nice. And then you go, well, maybe, you know, maybe they are, but maybe they're insane, you know, or maybe they're axe murderers or something, you know. So I just played with that. You know, we played with that. I played with that in the lyric and framed it in sort of the context of a relationship of a guy who meets somebody, Kaylee Hughes, who he wants to really feel great about the fact that she's so super nice, but at the same time he's cynical enough to be worried about it, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I kind of don't reveal that until the bridge of the song, where he kind of says, like, you know, do you have somebody buried underneath your lawn, you know, kind of thing, you know. And it's very humorous and you know, tongue in cheek. There's a lot of humor as a device in my songwriting these days. I like to do that, and we really played it up. If you guys have seen, there's a animated video for that song. So yeah, I really played up that whole.
Is it out on YouTube now, or?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's on Vivo. Yeah, you can get it in all those places.
That's cool. So what's your favorite track off this new album that if you could pick?
Oh man, that's like asking you like who your, you know, what your favorite kid is. Yeah. You know, I don't know. I can't say, man. It would you know, it would differ depending on the day. But I will say that I do like Kaylee Hughes. I think it's fun, and the cool thing about it, speaking of kids, is my son actually played on Kaylee Hughes. He's a drummer, and yeah, he's a teenage drummer, man. He's really good for his age. I mean, not even for his age. He's, you know, he's already playing professionally here and there in like production pit bands and things like that. I mean, he's definitely, his skills are way beyond his years. So you know, yeah, I mean, he's a pro. Not that I'm biased, but you know, so he played on that song, which was really fun.
Now, you said you produce other people, right?
Yeah, I don't do so much of it these days. I was doing it for some years, you know, mostly like local acts and things like that. You know, friends and people like that. These days, I'm doing more like production for television and podcasts and radio. That's
okay.
what I'm doing. You know, these days. But yeah,
that's where the money is,
for sure.
That's where the money is.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I freelanced and did the music thing, the music production thing. You know, like I said, producing local artists, doing some TV and commercial music work and things like that. I did that for I don't know, about like 15 years.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a tough slog, man, you know, and the business is harder and harder. It gets harder and harder every year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just at a few years back, I just pivoted and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and do something a little where the work is a little more reliable, you know.
Steady kind of, right?
Yeah.
I got you.
You know what? I see that most of the songs, it's pretty quick albums to listen, because most of the songs are under 2 minutes. It's like 2 minutes, under 3 minutes, all your song. It's just a good way of doing that. Like, it's easy, like you can put it on and like within 20 minutes, you pretty much heard the whole album.
Yeah.
You went from Flop of the World to Top of the World. What was that about?
Yeah.
Top of the world. Yeah,
sort of the dual thing there. Yeah, and to speak to your point about the short, yeah, people like, how come the records are so short? You know, because I'm sort of a proponent of the 3 minute pop song. You know, the 2.5 minute pop song. Old school. You know, I like to have no fat in the music and try to get to the hooks and do all that kind of stuff. As best as I can, as fast as I can. So I like the songs to be really concise and catchy. You know, that's the goal anyway. You know, I don't know if I achieve it, but you know, with that, then of course you have short songs translates into a short record in short records. You know, so
nothing wrong with that. The best albums, as far as I'm concerned, ever recorded are under 35 minutes.
Yeah, man, me too. I'm really,
you know, and don't get me wrong, I could sit and listen to Exile on Main Street or something anytime. Okay, double album by the Stones.
Right.
But you know, give me the first Ramones record anytime.
Yeah, man, I'm of that mindset too.
28 minutes. It's enough to have a few beers and keep my attention. That's about it.
Yeah, especially in this day and age with the short attention span. But to speak to your question about Flop of the World and Top of the World, Flop came first. That was sort of just, again, using humor as a device in the songwriting, play on words, look, ma, Top of the World, Flop of the World. Like, I thought like it would be funny. And the song is sort of a, I wouldn't say there's some autobiographical stuff in there, but it's basically about a sad sack musician, who's maybe crossed his prime a little bit. I mean, I wouldn't say I wrote it about myself, but I'd be lying to say if there wasn't some personal experience in there. So it's a guy who's, kind of past his prime a little bit, and he's ruminating about all that, and sort of a sad sack vibe, and that's why we sort of have the the kind of old school brass, English music hall, Tin Pan Alley kind of vibe.
Yeah, like there's even some little Kinks-ish kind of thing. Like when the Kinks were very more, right, the more like British Kinks.
Yeah. So I kind of went that way with the song, and had Flop of the World as one of the early tunes, and I thought it was cool and was fun, and I was kind of listening to a lot of all things. I was getting into like some old Leon Redbone from the 70s, and that vibe is in there too, so that was that. And then I was to be honest, it's funny how these things evolve, like I was thinking about calling the record Flop of the World with an F, but then over time, like some of my friends, some of my guys who were playing in my band, they work in like music journalism, so they have like some of that mindset, like, I don't know, man, that might not be such a great title, it's kind of not like positive, it doesn't kind of go with your other vibes, and so I don't know, not that I always listen to people, but I did think about it for a while, and then I was thinking about like how to bookend this record in a way, like I always like doing that kind of stuff. So then I thought, okay, Top of the World. Why don't I've done this before on other records where I do like a musical reprise. Right. So we did a string orchestration. It's all real strings of the melody from Flop of the World, and I ended the record with it, and we call it Top of the World. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to call, it's all high concept silliness, but, and then for people who really listen, there's a little Easter egg in there in both those songs that relate, is that Flop of the World ends with a sour tuba note, like a half step. And again, I'm sorry if I'm getting too, it's like, bwomp, bwomp, not what you would normally like expect.
Right.
Top of the World, when it ends positively. Boom, boom, kind of things. These little things, man.
Easter eggs.
All little Easter eggs, and very, ridiculously, disappearing up my own navel, high concept stuff, but
if you know kind of thing.
Yeah, and so I decided to call it Top of the World, and then to make a long story longer, my wife was going through some old photos. And I love the way all this stuff serendipitously happens, and I just go with it, Like I always tell my songwriting students, just let the song tell you what it wants to be. And if you listen, you will get, not to get too hippy dippy, but you will get clues, So just out of the blue, my wife was going through some old photos, which is something she almost never does. And she comes up and she's like, here's this picture of me from around the time when I put out my first record. We think she took it. I don't even know.
Wow.
And it's the picture that's on the cover. And and I was like, that's it. That's the, there it is. I was like, that's the record. That's the album cover, Top of the World. To me, like a young man, 1998 probably, full head of hair, and standing on a beach with a shot up, from below, looking up at blue clouds. I was like, that's it. That's the album cover, So then to play with the sort of, again, more high concept, to play with the perspective of it, and the top and the flop, for people who have the CD, if they open the CD, there's sort of an inverse picture of that. It's a current day picture of me shot from above. I'm in a black T-shirt. I'm not in a white T-shirt. My hands are in
like a negative sort of.
Yeah, like a negative thing, you know, follically challenged, you know. So it's like top of the world, and you open
us here, all three of us here,
top of the world, and then you open the CD, and you've got top of the world if you want to go there, you know. So again, all high concept craziness, but
whenever I hear a top of the world, something related to top of the world, of course you're going to think, like you said, look, Ma, top of the world, right. Jimmy Cagney.
Right.
But I always think of also like the Carpenters song, Top of the World.
Yeah, you know, to be honest, I should have thought of that, because I am like a 60s, 70s guy in a lot of ways, you know, and then I of course I didn't in the immediate, because that's so sort of like ingrained. It's like, you know, looking at the furniture in your house, you know.
Yeah.
And then when the record came out, somebody was like, yeah, look, top of the world, looking down on creation. And I was like, yeah, okay. Again, just whatever, man, go with it, you know.
I have to admit, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, I am a big Carpenters fan. I have been since I was a kid.
Man.
And you know, of course, people are gonna go, "Oh, that's lame" or whatever. No, okay, they were great. They were great singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
Okay, and I had Vindication. People used to tease me about it, but I had Vindication many years later because I found out that Lemmy from Motorhead was a big Carpenters fan. So I was like, fuck you all.
Yeah, I love some of that stuff. I mean, that's why it's like, yeah, some of the stuff from the 70s is schmaltzy, but at the same time, man, you know, if you put yourself in the right mindset and you understand it for what it was and the time that it came out of, you know, like with this record, Top of the World, sometimes people are saying like, you know, oh, we hear a little bit of like Paul Williams, you know, like,
I didn't think of that. Yeah, okay.
People make fun of that in a way too. Like, but when you think about, you look at Paul Williams, it's like, dude wrote like amazing songs for the Carpenters and other people, and you know, just a crazy talent. You know, so, and I think that's cool. Like the Lemmy story is cool, man, because it's like, I think most artists are, and people in general, obviously, are, you know, we want to in today's society pigeonhole everybody into like, you know, buckets because it's just easier, you know, but everybody is pretty wide ranging, especially musicians. I think the best musicians are wide ranging, you know, in their taste. I mean, most of the time, I mean, these days I listen to more jazz than anything else. Like, you know, like.
And it's funny you say that, because I think that the longer you get into music and play music and be around music and all that, the more you get into jazz.
Yeah, jazz is good, man.
It's like you talk to guys you would never think.
Right.
You know, they might have been playing punk rock for 30 years or something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
And they'll love a Coltrane record or a Miles Davis record or something.
Oh,
okay?
yeah, man. You know, like
it all comes back to that shit.
It always does, man. Yeah. And people are wide ranging, man. You know, so to me, to hear that Lemmy likes, you know, the Carpenters is.
I have to add to that, too. There's another band that Lemmy loved that'll blow your mind, too.
Who's that?
ABBA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, man. Great pop stuff.
Yeah, he was a huge ABBA fan. Yeah. Him and Joey Ramone were big ABBA fans.
You know what? I hate to admit, I like ABBA.
Everybody, how can you not like ABBA?
It's like I'm a weird. I love Duran. That's my band. Duran guy,
stuff, man. Catchy stuff.
You know, a good song is a good song.
It's like, you know what song I like Wearing Clothes. I thought that was catchy and good and fast, and it was very good. I enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I sort of like think that there's been a million songs written about people wanting to take their clothes off.
Yeah.
So. Great song.
I figure I write one about keeping your clothes on, you know?
Yeah, I thought that was great.
So I got to go there. Are you doing any live shows?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it, man. My life, like I said before, it's the problem with me is bandwidth, you know, just like time and figuring out what I'm going to do. You know, I haven't done live stuff in a while. I would like to do it. I'm trying to figure it out now, actually to the point now where I've been doing promo for this record for a couple of months and things are maybe, you know, kind of starting to wind down on that front. So I kind of set a goal for myself to like, okay, when you kind of getting through the press cycle, start to think about if you want to do some live stuff. I mean, I wouldn't be touring or anything like that. I don't have you know, the means or the money or the label that I'm on, we're not going
Right.
to be financially able to do that stuff. But yeah, I might do some live shows. You know, I'm trying to figure it out in terms of my time, and you know, like that's it. Because you know, people don't realize it. Just in order to get a band together, it's yeah. I mean, my music lends itself more to a band than just, you know, getting up there with a guitar or a piano or something. So yeah, it's a bit, you know, it's a bit of an enterprise, you know, to get a band together. I have a lot of players that have played with me in the past live, so that wouldn't be too much of a problem. But you know, just getting everybody together, rehearsing and getting it together enough to be presentable.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. The jury's still out on that one. I'd like to do it. I'm thinking about it. I might do a few. You know, we'll see.
Well, if you get that off the ground, you got to let us know, because we'll promote it for you.
Cool, man.
Yeah, we can put it on the Rock Show page and let people.
Yeah, we'll put it out. I mean, we have over 3,000 followers on the page.
Yeah,
and that's just the one group page. You know, my followers alone are over 5,000. So, you know, I hit a decent amount of people.
Cool.
But
thank you, man. I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, no problem. And you know, just keep us up to date. And is there any chance of recording another album soon? You got more material in the can, or you're not sure yet?
Yeah, I mean, there's always, you know, there's some tunes that are always been hanging around that I haven't gotten to. So there's those. And then there's always, you know, new ones trickling in here and there when the mood hits me and when I have the time, you know, I get to it. So yeah, I'd like to do it. I mean, I certainly don't want to, you know, wait another ridiculous 14 years to put out a record. It's ridiculous, you know. I mean, I've been lucky with the response of this record has been great, you know, like sort of, you know, all the outpouring from people and stuff. You know, it's been, like I said, it's been a long time. So you know, I've been lucky in that regard, you know, but I don't want to maybe do it again or wait that long. So yeah, I'm thinking about it, man.
You know, a lot of, I'm sure you know this, a lot of people, when they're in between or they want to get something out quick, they put out something live.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
You know, you could kill two birds with one stone, play live shows and record one.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, for sure.
But the thing about this album was designed for the pretty much the ADD world.
Yeah.
You take the whole album to the shower. By the time you do all your stuff, you heard the whole album, and boom, and then you go on your day. It's very like, it keeps your attention. That's that thing. That's what I find good about it.
Cool, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's the intent, man. You know, I don't want to drone on. You know, I think with the advent of the CD age in the 90s, you know, I think where people could fit a ton of music on the medium, like people did that, you know, and then you have records that are, you know, way too long, you know, like 12, 14, 15, 20 track, you know, to me, it's crazy. Again, I'm like an old school pop guy. I want to get in, I want to get out. I want to give you the best I can give you. You know, I want to give you the best hooks and stuff I can give you in a short snippet of time. And you know, hey, if you want to hear more, then go back and listen to the record again. You know, like rather than bore people, you know, with like droning on and on with.
You know, I think when maybe you'll agree. I think when CDs first came out, or maybe in the decade or so after, by 2000 or so, I think albums became too long.
Yeah,
I think because you had that extra, you know, it's that 70-minute capability or so, and everybody just wanted to fill it up. I remember there's you know, even like the White Stripes used to do that, or even Iggy Pop did that on a solo album or two, you know, played over an hour. I'm like, Iggy, like nobody wants to hear like an hour and 10-minute Iggy album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's but you know, it's great to see somebody come out with, you know, short, to the point, concise songs, do it under 35 minutes, and hammer out a great sounding record.
Yeah, man. I always look at it like that. Yeah, it makes sense to me, you know. Like just a collection of like pop singles, you know, always looking at it almost like a greatest hits kind of thing, you know.
Right. Exactly.
You know what, I was talking, me and Mike would talk about Aerosmith before we did this show. We were doing a show Aerosmith. It went a little long. But if we look, most of the first 6 albums, they were under 36 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You had like one song that was 7 minutes, and then another song that was 4 minutes, but most of the songs were like 3-minute song, and then when and the album plays.
Their early stuff in the 70s, they were drawing from that 60s Stones, Yardbirds kind of thing that was, short songs, 3-minute singles, basically, but they were heavy, in that 3 minutes, which was something new at the time. But I mean, it's the same concept.
Totally the same. I mean, you could even, like you mentioned the Ramones before, to me, the Ramones are like, they're like Phil Spector with distorted guitars, like you really think about
and they would tell you that. That's what
and that's the genius of the Ramones. Shout out to another bunch of Queens guys. My son went to Forest Hills High School where the Ramones
went.
And Simon and Garfunkel and Leslie West from Mount.
Leslie West,
Burt Bacharach. I mean, it just goes on and on. The Queens guys. But I mean, they totally got it. I think that was just like in the zeitgeist at the time, the short 3-minute pop song that I kind of go after at the time. But also, I think a lot of things, like we were talking about a minute ago about the CDs, I think a lot of people don't realize that the music business has always kind of been powered in a way or influenced by the medium. So like at the time of those records, the early 70s, 60s, whatever, I mean, people were listening primarily on vinyl, right? So you can only fit so much on a vinyl record where it sounds good. You can start crunching and getting technical in the mastering side of things, but you start fitting more information on that 33 1/3 record, it starts to sound crunchy.
You're right.
So you were limited by the format. So by nature, that was like what people were doing, singles and full albums. And so they were limited. So it was like 5 songs on each side, short and sweet. And,
you can easily go like 15 to 18 minutes.
Yeah.
You can easily do it on each side. You can do 18 minutes easily, and the sound can still be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a limit, I remember getting those records. You ever get those back in the day, like those Now Explosion and K-Tel records back
K-Tel, yep.
They'd fit like 1,000. You'd see them on TV.
And it sounded like crap.
It sounds like garbage. There's like 1,000 songs on it. It sounds like,
The only good thing about those K-Tel records, I remember I had a few of them as a kid. This way you didn't, you might just like one song. Okay, so you didn't have to go out and buy the album.
Right.
Like I think there was one with like I Was Made for Loving You Baby by Kiss.
Right.
Okay, and like ABBA on the same one. It was like all these like top 40 songs on one K-Tel record that you got in Corvettes for $5.
Right. Times Square stores, or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, the scratchy
terrible.
And I mean, if you go back even further, I mean, albums weren't even the main idea. The idea was the hit 3-minute single. So people were buying 45s like crazy. I mean, I've seen, like my mother's 45 collection, okay, from the early 60s and everything like that, late 50s. And, it's great songs. These people had albums, but nobody bought them. Okay, it was all just 45s.
Yeah, for sure. That era was singles driven. For sure. The album stuff didn't start to sneak in until like the late 60s.
Late 60s, yeah.
Mid 60s, and then really kind of took off in the 70s. And it's funny now because I think really in the dawn of streaming and everything, I mean, I listen to records. I always listen to albums, whether it's on Spotify or wherever, not, format notwithstanding. I'd like to listen to a collection of songs. I always do that. But yeah, I think in the Spotify age, generally speaking now,
come back to
the single. I think we've gone back to the single.
I was thinking about that recently, actually. I kind of agree with that. I mean, it seems like now it's the song more than the album.
Yep.
And it's interesting. It's just I still look for the tangible thing. The Spotify stuff is great on the go, but I still want the tangible thing. And some people just aren't doing that. It's interesting how vinyls made a comeback. Even cassettes. I'm like, does anybody even have a tape recorder anymore? I mean, like,
where are they playing these?
Where are they playing these cassettes? All right,
like, where are they playing them? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but they're doing it, and I mean, cassettes were like, to me, like the worst thing. Okay, I mean, it was great. You're in your car, you didn't care how it sounded, or you have a boom box back in the 80s. You sit there on a park bench and play a tape. Okay, but it broke. It would get tangled up. It was always something. I must have went through like trying to think like a tape. I was always into punk, so like maybe like the first Bad Brains record. Okay, I went through like 3 cassettes.
Yeah, like 3 of those. Yeah. Cassettes are funny, man. It's tape, so it's interesting because it has like a tape compression sound to it, which is kind of cool. But yeah, they were kind of like, you left them in your car dashboard, in August, and like melted.
That was the end of it. Yeah, I did melt a Purple Rain cassette one time.
That was a great album, Purple Rain, that Prince album. I love that album.
Yeah,
man.
You know what's funny? I look at my playlist, and it's like it's like all over the place. I got from country to freaking English rock to and like everything. It goes from like it could go from Willie Nelson to Snoop Dogg in there like within no time.
I'm like that too. A good song is a good song. I don't care. I'll listen to
I like a lot of George
and then heavy metal right after that. I don't care.
I like a lot of George Harrison. Like he was very good. His album, I think that's one of the greatest albums ever made.
All Things Must Pass. You're talking about. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sure. Yeah, it's funny how I think that's just if you're a thoughtful person, man, you like an eclectic sort of you like eclectic sort of taste in music, and it's funny because it kind of was. Sometimes I think that's ingrained in people like us of a certain age who grew up, and I've spoken about this on other podcasts and stuff that I've been doing for this record, like, and a lot of people have agreed with me. Like we grew up at the kind of the end of the AM radio days, right? Yeah. And if when we I used to listen to AM radio as a kid, like WABC and like
NBC.
And like what they did was exactly what Rob was saying about his playlist, is that they didn't really care so much about genre. They just cared about a good song and hits of the day. So they would play a cross section. Yeah, I remember as a kid hearing I would hear the Carpenters, and then like Doobie Brothers, What a Fool Believes. Then I would hear like Genesis, Abacab, and then I would hear like Brandy or a Fine Girl, something. Just like it was a mix of things. They didn't really care. I think that later on the radio business got corporate and
absolutely
that's what happened.
Like focus the genre.
By the 80s, they wanted to get everything into a niche. Yeah. And then to me, like, even though there was some great bands out of this era, but like the alternative era of like maybe, I don't know, 86 to 91 or something like that. I used to say like alternative to what? It's on the radio.
Right.
Okay. And this doesn't mean anything. Okay. And that got compartmentalized. Yeah. You keep, you listen to alternative music. I never really understood what that meant. Okay.
Yeah.
But then, then you have your rap stations and the dance music stations. Everything was in New York. Everything was categorized. Now, radio, unless you listen to satellite, radio is like unlistenable, free radio.
Yeah, man, it's weird. It seems like I think a lot of people missed out on that stuff. Like people who grew up listening in that era, like we got the tail end of 70s.
We did.
But a lot of people, obviously, younger than us, didn't, and so they've missed out on a lot of cool stuff that they. And I would venture to say that those people probably don't have, the broader musical tastes that Rob had mentioned in his playlist. Right. They just because they found some niche that they liked, and they then they just went there, and that was it. They just listened to that radio station, and maybe they got the taste of some other things here and there on TV and stuff like that.
Not much though. It didn't drift far from the playlist.
No. So I think that's a shame, man. It's like it's a shame. It's like what can you do?
Some of these young kids surprise me. Not to sound like an old man, but I guess I am. They'll find something, and you go like, "Oh, really? You listening to Alice Cooper? All right."
Yeah, cool. But they're doing it with Guitar Hero. They're doing
right because of Guitar Hero, the games and everything. They're learning all that stuff. That's great.
A lot of games put those old songs in the game, and you got a whole new audience. Like they hear something like a Metallica or something that's in the video game, they're like, "Oh my God, I love this stuff," and then they'll start listening to that stuff because I thought the Guardian of the Galaxy, those soundtrack, the two soundtrack that took were fantastic. It went from so many genre, like it would hit like everything. It was everything. It was great.
It's true, and you could be like a person that not everybody knows, and you end up on some Guardian of the Galaxy soundtrack or some soundtrack. Next thing you know, you're a superstar, because these things are what promotes it now. The movies and video games and all these. It's not like the old days where you went out and played 100 shows in a year and earned your bones like that. And then, it's not like that anymore.
Yeah, it's not like that. It's not really like that anymore. I mean,
I'd like to see it come back to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a certain validity to that, because now I think people come up and maybe they don't get a chance to make their bones. They don't get a chance to put in their 10,000 hours, slogging it out in basements. And, I remember doing that as a kid and playing shitty gigs. And, like you do build the muscle there, so I think a lot of people who end up on, sort of thrust into fame these days because they have 4 billion TikTok followers or something, but they have never played like a live show in their life,
Right.
And then all of a sudden the machine takes over and they thrust these people out into the world, and then they crash and burn because
right.
You don't want to throw somebody out into Madison Square Garden when they've never like played a party, a block party or a club, So
and on top of that, Mark, if you fail, you're done.
Oh yeah, and then you're gone.
If you think about, I mentioned Iggy Pop earlier, right? Like his band, the Stooges.
Right.
Those first 3 records sold nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They never would have been, if that could never have happened today. Even the punk records in the 70s, so many bands that went on to be big, if they didn't sell on their first record, if it was today, they would have been gone.
Yeah, that's the music
business. That's the sad thing about the industry, I think.
Yeah, the music business has really radically changed in so many ways, but one of the ways you're mentioning is that there's no room for artist development anymore. There used to be. Back in the day, in the 60s and 50s, 60s, 70s, and even to a bit in the 80s, sure. From my knowledge and being in that vibe coming up at that time and playing and talking to managers and lawyers and things like that at that time, it seemed like the major labels at the time were okay with developing people and letting them, giving them a few albums to find their legs. They had other bands at the time, the big name bands that could, carry it. So they could, they could sign a kid like Prince in the late 70s, and Warner could sign Prince, and they would be like, well, we don't know about this kid. He seems like he's great, but we'll see. We don't know what's going to happen. But they give him a couple of records to find his footing. Meanwhile, they've got whatever, James Taylor and Randy Newman or whoever paying the bills, on the labels, so they could, do that. Nowadays, it's like, as far as I know, and I don't play that game anymore. I'm so far out of it. But from what I see, it's like, they're looking for people who already have a tremendous following. They don't want to do any legwork. They don't want to do any development. They just want to find something that's fully formed and has a huge audience behind it, and then just put it up on a slightly bigger platform and magnify it the best they can. And yeah, man, it's a shame because, maybe there's people out there that are great, that would really benefit from some development time, and just not happening anymore.
Well, what'd they call that? Artists and repertoire?
Yeah, I mean, there used to be
like
A&R department that would do that. Yeah, I mean, A&R people, sort of a long history to the A&R world, but yeah, when at this point in time, it's pretty much looked upon as like A&R people are the people who will go out and look for new talent. And I'm sure that just means that there's some 20-year-old A&R, 25-year-old A&R guy who sits in his office all day and scrolls through TikTok,
Instagram, and whatever.
Yeah, he doesn't even go to a club, to see
right.
Right.
All right, Mark Bacino, want to thank you for coming on.
Hey, man. Great conversation.
Great conversation. And your new album, Top of the World, is fantastic. Everybody should check it out. Where can we find this album? Where can people get it?
You can get it at all those websites we spoke about before. MarkBacino.com. It'll take you everywhere. Again, Mark with a K, Bacino. You can also go to the label's website, which is parasolrecords.com.
Yeah.
Parasolrecords.com. They'll hook you up there, and if you'd like, and a lot of people like Bandcamp these days, so the label has a Bandcamp page set up for me, which is markbacino.bandcamp.com. So you can get all the music there, and the new record's out on vinyl, it's out on CD, digital download, whatever you like, man.
all the formats.
Yep.
You know what? I'm gonna put the links to all these stuff anyway. When I do, I like to put links so people can just click on it and they can go and see the show. They like the album, want to hear it, and I'll put a link.
Excellent.
We'll link it all up for you so they can get to it.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, Rob. So what do we say at the end of every episode?
We don't get drunk.
We get lumped up.
And we see you next time, people.
All right. Take care, people.
See ya.